Good evening again. As many of you know, this month's theme is the Centers for Spiritual Living's global vision, a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. Our topic this evening is break through the chains of our human beliefs, learn how to reveal your divine innate magnificence. And by learning how to reveal our divine innate magnificence, this will enable each and every one of us to live to our full potentiality, sharing that magnificence with all of humanity, thus lifting the vibrational consciousness of the entire world higher and higher. Now, I believe that there are three ways that will help us greatly reveal our divine innate magnificence. We must know, believe, and live from, number one, the place that the peace and the power of a conscious recognition of the divine presence is within each and every one of us. This presence of the infinite is in, through, and as all of us and all of creation. And as it's stated in Corinthians 2, and I quote, "The Lord is that Spirit, and where that Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty," unquote. End of quote. Liberty meaning the universal innate law, which is the creative process. We must know, believe, and live, number two, from the embodiment that we are here for a specific purpose, to co-create with the divine, and we are all vital. Each and every one of us are all vital to be our own authentic, unique expressions of the divine, so that we reveal the peace, the harmony, and the balance to the world that already exists. And we must know, believe, and live from, three, our core principle, two, which is the creative process. The creative process states that spirit is the great causative power of the universe. The word or thought of God eternally initiates that divine creative process. And in this process, the law is continuously set into motion to create from the unformed substance which follows the thought patterns of spirit. Now remember, since the human spirit is one with the universal spirit, and the human subjective merges with the universal subjective, all human thought is creative. It's all creative, and it all reenacts in microcosm the divine creative process. Now, as Dr. Ernest Holmes stated, the one, meaning spirit, manifests itself in and through all of creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. I want to repeat that. This one, he was meaning spirit, manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. Now, to me, this means that whatever is happening or appearing to be happening or going on in the outer world has absolutely no effect to our inner core. Our inner core is never, ever affected. Our inner core is the peace, the harmony, the love, the perfection, the warmth, the creativity, the abundance and joy that who we are. Our inner core is changeless. Our inner core is changeless, just as the nature of God is changeless. We, as being one with the divine, inseparable from the divine, have the same nature. And we all express this nature so uniquely and so individually. Outside conditions have no effect on our nature. Now, we all desire to experience this liberty that I mentioned earlier, this universal innate law, and to know that the all-comprehensive mind and principle is in every word that we speak. Think about that. It's in every word that we speak. The Zend Avesta tells us that all good things are created by Mazda, the principle of light. We have here a concept of light, of liberty, and of freedom accompanying our words. There is a divine authority imparting a creativeness to our thoughts. This creative power of spirit is in our word, or in our experience in such a degree as we become conscious of it, and as we become conscious of spirit. Now, in our philosophy, we all know that the words of love overcome thoughts of hate. We all know that having a sense of power will overcome a belief of weakness. We all know that peace will heal confusion. You agree with that? Okay. I believe that all of our work should really be built upon the belief that good overcomes evil, and this is done not by combating evil, but by transcending it. Transcending it. Jesus taught that the non-combativeness of spirit is the principle back of the law of non-resistance. It would benefit all of us to remember that spirit has no opposites. Spirit, the divine, is always perfect, harmonious, joyous, loving, balanced, and free. There is absolutely no difference between our spirit and the spirit of the divine concerning the essence of its own or ourselves because of who we are. We are one with the one, and we are one of its creations. The spirit of man is the spirit of God in man. The spirit of man is the spirit of God in man. The two are one. A quote from Science of Mind, 483. We learn that persistence, constructive thought, is the greatest power known and the most effective. If the visible effect in our lives is not what it should be, if we are unhappy, if we are sick and poverty-stricken, we know the remedy. The truth is always the remedy. And the truth is that the law of liberty is the only real law. The law of liberty is the only real law. When we reverse the process of thought, the effect will be reversed. That was the end of the quote. Again, to me, it comes down to change your thinking, change your life. And each of us have the power of choice and free will to do this if we so have that desire. Become the victor, not the victim. I'm going to say that again. Become the victor, not the victim. I feel here it would be beneficial to each of us to remember that this change that I'm talking about can only occur in accordance with your acceptance and embodiment of the truth. It is done unto you as you believe, as Jesus said. The universe can give to each and every one of us the good that we consciously accept, recognizing that the good is mine to have because of who I am, one with the divine, a child of the infinite. Now, from the text of Taoism, here is a sentence that I thought applies. There is an originating and all-comprehending principle in my words and an authoritative law for the things which I enforce. So in reality, in truth, behind our words is spirit. And when we can live from and embody that all that is received from the divine, from spirit, is good and very good, and only good, for that is all that it knows. It makes a world of difference, not only for us individually, but for all of humanity. If we can also remember that the energy of spirit cannot be exhausted, and that the energy is infinite, and that there is enough, knowing that, it will empower each and every one of you. Because then you will not place any restrictions on this energy. There's enough to spare and enough to share, so place no restrictions on it. So it's our attitude that really might cause feelings of restriction, that can cause us not to reveal our divine innate magnificence. Remember that magnificence is at the core of our being, and it is there, it'll never go away, and no one or no experience can rob us of this magnificence. It's been God-given. And it is our responsibility, and I feel this strongly, it is each one's responsibility to share this unique, individualized expression of us, which is really expressing God with the world and all of humanity. I really believe that's one of our responsibilities here in this vibration called life. So I say use all the power of the divine that you can consciously accept, because you're never going to exhaust it. You are never going to dull that spiritual energy that exists because of where it comes from. The one, God, the divine, that's where it comes from. The energy you utilize will never shortchange anyone else. There is enough and more than enough, as I said, for all to utilize. So if each and every one of us walk in and lives this life using the 3 points I mentioned earlier, which are knowing, believing, and living from, again, one, that the peace and power of a conscious recognition of the divine presence is within each and every one of us. The divine presence is that spirit, and where spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And again, liberty meaning the universal innate law, which is the creative process. And the second point I mentioned earlier, from the embodiment that we are here for a specific purpose, to co-create with the divine. And we are all vital. Each and every one of us are all vital to be our own authentic, unique expressions of the divine, so that we really will reveal the peace, the harmony, and love and balance to the world that really already exists. We just have to reveal more and more of it. And the third thing was from our core principle 2, which is the creative process. And the creative process states that spirit is the great causative power of the universe. The word or thought of God eternally initiates that divine creative process, and in its process, law is continuously set into motion to create and manifest our thoughts. I strongly believe that we will be doing our part regarding a world that works for all and for all of creation.
Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
And so I think it bears taking another look at something that Ed started with, because I always love to hear things more than once or someone else's take on it, because sometimes like you can read something 3 or 4 times, and until you're in that right place where your mind is ready to accept the concept, you may not get it until that moment, and then all of a sudden you're like, aha! So when we talk about and this is one of the what we believes that we actually read here, this phrase that he gave from Ernest Holmes, this one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. Which sounds so heady and kind of out there, right? It sounds very spacey and kind of, it's very intellectual. And Ernest Holmes, in his way, was very intellectual. But it's really just saying that we are expressions of the one mind. But since it does not experience duality itself, it is not absorbed, as we can be absorbed by the duality that we experience. But it is never absorbed by that. We, living in a dual appearance, have that experience, but the divine does not have that experience. The divine is just a neutral energy. It doesn't have any concept of duality. So that's where that idea, to me, that's what resonates with me, or that's how I get it for myself. So how do we break through these chains of our beliefs? Now, Reverend Ed gave us the wonderful 3 points. Do you remember those offhand?
Yeah.
They're long.
Yeah.
Well,
Knowing the consciousness of the divine is in, through, and as each and every one.
Right.
Showing up and being the expression of the divine.
Yes.
And understanding the law itself, which
The
is
law
part of
itself, the creative process, exactly. So those are 3 great things to use, but we also use our spiritual practices, something that we always do: meditation, spiritual mind treatment, visioning. There's so many. We have so many different ones, like the Science of Mind toolbox that Reverend Ed loves to talk about all the time. But I'd like to offer some additional options. So, number 1, we live in a universe where everything is found and nothing is lost. Now, this was something that I learned a long time ago. It was really cute, because I used to say, that nothing is lost in the universe. And then somebody said, well, that's not the most positive way to put that. And I thought, oh, okay, so what do you think it should be? And they said, everything is found in the universe. So you aren't stuck on the want or the negativity or the limitation. You're stuck on that truth of everything is found. So everything is found in the universe. So this energy that is constantly holding what we call life in place, that's what it is always aware of everything, is always aware of all things that are going on. And it is endless. It's limitless and it's endless. So these are important things to remember. The second thing is, we have full availability to this energy. And there's a great example that I think of. I can remember this happening to me in the past, and some of you may have experienced it yourself, but it's like you come home and you're completely exhausted and you just kind of fall in the chair. You really don't want to have anything else to do that night. It's like, maybe just turn on the TV and veg out. I don't want to deal with anything. Just totally exhausted. And then you get a call on the phone. And the call you get is from someone you really love to be with. Someone who really energizes you. Have you ever noticed that in that moment, that you can be totally re-energized, even though moments before you were completely exhausted and you had no energy, but you get that call and it's like, yes, I'd love to go out, right? and it's like, it makes no sense, but that's a perfect example of this universal energy. We can draw upon that in the moment, in that second. We can just call on it and get it into our life and be ready to move forward with something new and exciting. So now Ernest Holmes in Love and Law says, people must realize that no matter how infinite the infinite may be, it can only become to them what it can become through them. That's an important line. I want to read that one more time. It can only become to them what it can become through them. We must look at ourselves with our own eyes. If we could open up, clean house mentally, and get out of ourselves everything that ails us, and I don't care what poverty or misery is, everything would be allowed because the infinite cannot refuse anything. So no matter what it is that we're going through, whatever it is that's the experience that we're having in our life, and we have experiences. We don't deny that there is pain, that there is difficulty, that there is problems that go on in this reality that we call life. Experiences that feel out of alignment with our divine truth. But the truth is that no matter what that is, as he said here, we can, do that clean house mentally, get, out of ourselves anything that's ailing us, and he doesn't care what poverty or misery it is. You can get it out. You can get that out. It doesn't say that we avoid or pretend it doesn't exist. It means that we look at it and say, oh, this is back. This thing that I may have experienced at another time, I don't need that anymore. I'm choosing this. And I choose to focus my energy on that and say, oh, how interesting, you're back. Thank you, I release you. I accept this. So it's taking the mind from here to there, getting yourself out of whatever this is. Now, if something like that continues to come up, then maybe there's some personal work you need to do on it, some journaling, some meditation, some contemplation that would allow you to get a deeper understanding of maybe where is this coming from. Because sometimes we have to look and see, why is that there? Because, you look at it sometimes and you can't even remember why that came up. And there's all kinds of different ways that we can do that we can find those things that may be causing something that's going on in our life in a circular motion. And then we can release it and start a new channel. Now, for me, this idea of, this situation or this idea of God as like the ultimate idea, the ultimate fullness and wholeness of life. For me, it helps to look at Disneyland versus other amusement parks. I'm a Disneyaholic, I must admit. When I was a child, I lived in California, and we went to Disney all the time. Back in the day when they had e-tickets and all the different little tickets for the different kinds of rides, not just one price and you go on everything you want whenever you want. You would bring old tickets with you for other rides and things like that. So we would go a lot, but we would go on a special night that, like, my father worked for the phone company, and we would go when they had a ticket that you could ride anything you wanted all night long. So we just had a blast, and it was usually just before Christmas, so Disneyland was all decked out for Christmas, the giant Christmas tree in Main Street and all this. So it was a really great thing. The thing that's always taken me about Disneyland is that when you go to Disneyland and you walk anywhere in Disneyland, anywhere that you go in Disneyland, it is visually complete. So if I'm walking from, say, Fantasyland and I'm crossing the threshold into Frontierland, Fantasyland doesn't end and there's not open scaffoldings. It's a wall that completes and then it starts with something new. Sometimes you'll see a door that says cast only, right? And that door is where the cast goes. When they go behind that door, I'm sure that it's open scaffoldings and unfinished things inside there. But you don't see that. You, when you are walking around, are completely filled with the fantasy that the Imagineers wanted you to experience. Even the lakes and the landscapes and everything is all tying in. And I remember that, like the train would take you around, and as it took you around, they'd have these open areas, and they say, and this is where more imagination can take place. Now, there wasn't a lot in that day because that was California, and that place was just filled up every space. I don't think there's anything open left there. But it's amazing, and then his imagination had to grow even further into Disney World. I mean, that's the amazing thing. That's the powerful things. So it's like the Imagineers were able to look at every little nuance. And I remember a story of Disney talking about, like, when the park first opened, that he would see characters from a different land walking through the wrong area. And at that point he said, we need to do something. So he dug tunnels underneath the park so that those characters would only appear in that area, and you wouldn't see someone from Tomorrowland walking through Main Street. So his imagination was so powerful. That's like the divine imagination. So then we look at other parks, okay? So in other parks, and I can remember this in so many of them that I visited, because I love amusement parks. But a lot of them you'll go and you'll see this beautiful facade, right? You'll see this great, wonderful facade, and when you go into the ride, everything's great. But you walk around the corner and you see all these open scaffoldings and steel beams holding all this up. It's like the imagination didn't make it around the corner. Isn't that how our life is sometimes? It's like our imagination doesn't quite make it around the corner, right? Sometimes we like, oh, wow, this concept is so great, and then somehow we bump into those things. It's like, but how am I going to make this happen? Oop, that's the magic word we don't say. How? We stay in the what. So it's always interesting to me, because I've even noticed that in these places that I've been, it's like if they're building something, and I've seen things that they were building at Disneyland, and I've seen things that they were building at other amusement parks, that it's just not the same. I mean, in Disneyland, they have like these beautiful murals in front of whatever's being built, that makes you feel like you're still a part of whatever that land is that you're in. Whereas in these other places, it'll be just like those mesh things that kind of like the shade cloth things stuck on the fence, and then there'll be a sign that says future coming, But it doesn't feel complete. But when you look at it, the divine idea is that idea of Disneyland, and our idea is that idea of the other amusement park. So our job, our position in this creative process, is to see on that level of the Disneyland versus the other amusement park. Because whatever's showing up in our life may have those scaffolds holding up a facade. But behind that facade is the divine image of perfection and wholeness. So it's always there and available to us. So we are all worthy of the magnificent vision of the divine for us. Because the divine idea is always bigger than our idea. And so that's breaking through that old idea. That's breaking from that old concept. And something that we can use from this human level that we can help to move us to that next level. So our call for this is this is a time to re-examine our limited and incomplete vision for our life. This is the time to do that. Let's look at the vision for our life and say, what's incomplete here? What do I need to add to that to make it more? To be willing to stretch and move beyond. Now, it's also to realize that there is a power in the universe for good, and we can use it. This is something Ernest Holmes would always say. There is a power in the universe for good, and we can use it. But we need to go a step further. And I love this, because the beauty of this organization is that it's opened at the top, and there's always something new opening up. And so it goes to the next level. We can further realize that this power has a greater vision for our life than we do. And as Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith says, it can use us. It can use us. That's when, And it was interesting because the reading this morning from the Science of Mind magazine was surrender. This is where we surrender into the divine idea. I set up what I feel is the concept, and that's the first step that Ernest Holmes talks about. There's power I can use. So I set up the idea, and then I say this or better. And I release it into law, or I release it to the divine to make that happen. In the same way that you released your idea into the universe about that globe, and it ended up coming into your life. And you really have to be aware of this sometimes. We miss it sometimes. It's so easy for us to miss it because it may be small things. But small and big doesn't matter to the divine. It doesn't matter because the divine doesn't know the difference between small and big. It's everything. So if it's everything, it's the small things and it's the large things. So we have the ability to use that. So we realize that God is indeed for us, and we release our belief that anything can be against us. So that's our call, is to do that. Realize that God is for you, and nothing is against you. Maybe your thoughts, and when you find them, you release them, and you decide what you want.